Let me ask you a question. Are you an entrepreneur who wants to make money but do it the right way? Do you want to win over your competition but keep your integrity intact? Well, if you answered yes, then Jeff Morrill is someone you ought to meet. Throughout the course of his entrepreneurial career, he's turned over $100 million in profit. And now, in his latest book, entitled Profit Wise, How to Make More Money by Doing the Right Thing, he unleashes all of his secrets of the trade for all of you to be successful. So if you're ready to take some notes and have a great conversation, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Jeff, it's great to be with you this afternoon, and I'm excited to learn all about how you help people maximize profits and reach their fullest business potential. Great to be with you this afternoon, and thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So, Jeff, I know that you have spent a large part of your life professionally talking about inclusive hiring practices. And as you know, that's a large part of my passion and professional work. So I'm going to start you off by asking you, what do you think is the key to developing a successful inclusive work culture?
I think there are a few, and I'd start with something fundamental and way upstream. And that is that I recommend that all businesses understand that the most important thing they can start with is a definition of reality. So there was a Herman Miller CEO back in the day. His name was Max Dupree, and he said the most important thing you can do as a leader is to define reality for your business. And for us, we defined reality for our business to include making sure that we had a full range of the talent available to us coming from our community. And that meant looking in places that were looking to attract members of groups who had not been traditionally well represented in automotive retail. So I guess we'll start there. And then once you've made that commitment and the managers that are working alongside you endorse that approach, then it's very important that you're communicating with applicants who are included in those groups you're trying to attract to your business. So one of the recommendations I have when you run a recruiting ad is to make sure that you specifically mention the kinds of hiring practices you have and the kind of people that you're looking for. So as an example, all of our recruiting ads talk about our diverse workforce and mention that we're specifically interested in attracting women and people of color and people of other groups that have not been well represented in automotive retail. And we want those people to be excited and invited, particularly to hire, to apply for the positions that we're hiring for.
And Jeff, I'm curious, you piqued my interest in your last answer on how do you think we get more women uh, involved in particularly male-dominated fields such as automotive and other fields of that realm?
We have to stop doing one important thing, and that is if all we do in our hiring is look for people who already have experience in our field, then that's going to have a tendency to lock in the structural uh, imbalances that already exist. So I'll give you an example. Approximately 1% of technicians in the United States are women. So if we run an ad that requires experience to join our team, then we're necessarily excluding almost everybody that would apply as a woman. So, one of the ways that we worked around that is to create an apprenticeship program so that applicants to become a technician at Planet Subaru did not need to already have experience as long as they had an aptitude and a passion for technical things, then we would help those people join our team and develop those skills.
And Jeff, when we talk about, I know that you have some interesting lessons that you've learned throughout your entrepreneurial career and trying to empower people to reach their fullest potential. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on your own entrepreneurial journey and how that helped you grow into the successful business or entrepreneur that you are today.
I never thought that I would end up where I ended up today. And what I mean by that is that when I graduated from Virginia Tech in 1994, I had every intention of working on political campaigns. That's what I had studied in college. It's what I had already been, I had always been interested in politics and had very strong views about how society could change to become, a better, we could become a better nation. So I accidentally ended up in the car business because the politician that I'd volunteered for in college just happened to own a Volvo dealership, and I couldn't find a job when I graduated. And I ended up there at his Volvo dealership in the service department, greeting customers. And and I never forgot that accidental good fortune to end up in an industry that had a lot of opportunity. And because of that, I've had a passion for inviting others into our business and into the industry who wouldn't have even thought that there was so much opportunity available to them. And when I talk about opportunity, I just want to contrast it with something like medicine or the law or investment banking. All of those industries require generally, I mean, there are exceptions, but tend to require very fancy educations and fine pedigrees. And our business, we don't require that. You don't need to go to a fancy school. We're looking for personal qualities that we think and know lead to success based on experience. And those are the qualities that we're looking for in people. And we're much less interested in the prior access that applicants might have had to those advantages that some people have.
And Jeff, I'm curious to ask you because I know that you know a lot about how to turn a successful profit in a business. So I'm curious to ask you about business sustainability and how you think businesses can remain sustainable and viable, particularly in the age of COVID. What's the key in your mind to establishing business sustainability?
Warren Buffett has a funny quote. He says that you don't find out who's been swimming naked until the tide goes out. And what he's talking about there is that the businesses that aren't very well run tend to take the worst of it when economic conditions decline. And COVID's been very unusual in that it's actually hurt very strong businesses just because of the way it's attacked certain industries. And I'll give you an example. You know, there are some industries that are clearly booming right now. You know, like we're on a Zoom link. I'd never heard of Zoom before COVID, and now I spend, you know, almost my whole life on Zoom calls. You compare that with the restaurant industry, which is, you know, even very well capitalized, very well managed restaurants are under tremendous pressure, and some of them have not made it, and perhaps some of them will not make it if they're barely hanging on now. So when I think about sustainability, I try to remember that the most important thing you can do is during the good times to run your business well and to make wise decisions, to pay down debt, not to take on a lot of leverage, to watch your expenses so that when the bad times come, you're prepared for those. And fortunately, we had done that. You know, over the years, we're in an industry that does have cycles. You know, the car business is it's up and down depending on many factors, including the economy. So we've learned that we need to keep our keep some reserves in place for when the bad times come, and also to make sure that our business is prepared at all times for a decline.
And Jeff, prior to our connecting today, you had sent me the pre-launch for your book Profit Wise, where you talk a lot about helping entrepreneurs do the right thing, and that you can do and earn a successful profit without selling your integrity as a business owner or entrepreneur. So I'm curious to get your sort of overview of the book and the lessons that you are hoping to teach through the effort.
I have a lot of specific techniques about how business owners can run a business that does good things for their community and the world and still allows them to make a profit. And it's not just a theory book. I mean, it's very specific. And I have things about how to organize your day and decisions you can make in your business, and how to improve the way you're hiring, all sorts of things like that. But perhaps the most interesting to me is the big theory of the book, which is that a lot of people think that doing the right thing in some way is conflicts with earning a good living and generating profits. And what we've found is that there is a way to make those two things coexist very successfully. And I'll give you just one example of how we do that. So in 2011, we put a huge solar array on our roof. It was very expensive, and the technology was just kind of getting developed at that point. So we've had a few few technical hiccups with it along the way, but it was it was very expensive. So we you could look at that system and say, well, why would we want to take on that big expense just to save our carbon emissions that we don't make a profit for? You know, in other words, reducing our emissions, there's really no direct financial benefit to doing that. You know, there's no uh, carbon trading system or anything that we get credits for, and nothing like that. But what we knew is that we wanted to do it because it was the right thing, But we also understood that if we could communicate to customers that we were the kind of dealership, the kind of business that was committed to this kind of effort, that people would be more likely to do business with us. And we were right, they do. And so there, depending on how you define the Boston metropolitan area, there are 7 or 8 dealerships within 40 minutes of downtown Boston. People have a lot of choices, but we hear over and over and over again, people will make a longer trip to come see us because they want to do business with people like us who share their values. So you can see how the expense of putting the system in uh, is diminished by the additional revenue that we've been able to obtain by people wanting to do business with us.
And I know for you that business diversity and inclusion is a big part of what you do. We talked earlier about women, and I'm curious to go back specifically for those individuals with disabilities. Uh, we had done a study, and I had worked previously with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and there was a study that they published of 77% of their medium sized businesses had told the chamber that they're willing to hire people with disabilities, but they just don't know where to find them. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how specifically recruiting wise we can recruit more individuals with disabilities, whether it be physical, mental, psychological, or otherwise, to positions of power and influence in the recruiting realm as well.
I think it starts by finding companies that are interested in progressive hiring. So, in other words, I'm trying to think of this in reverse instead of as an employer, the role that I usually find myself in. I'm thinking about this in terms of if I were a member of that community, how would I want to go about finding a job? Or if I were an advocate, how would I want to create some kind of pipeline into a company for people like that? And I think it starts with who are the progressive companies in the community. I'll give you an example. If you go to our website, planetsubaru.com, you can reach me directly. My website, excuse me, my email address is right there. And in a lot of companies, it's relatively easy to find an executive or the chief executive of the company to make an appeal to that person and um, ask to be considered or included in even if there's no existing formal system that that company has.
So I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the evolution of the car business. Obviously, you've been in it for a while, and certainly the advancement of electric cars is coming. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you think that industry will evolve, say, within in the next 10 years. And I know you also have had some experience in the retail space as well. And you had mentioned restaurants before, and I think retail is sort of in that same boat. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the future of the car industry as it relates to electric cars and the future of the retail space as well.
Yeah, I think that businesses need to continually adapt to the changing circumstances. And there was someone who made a joke about car dealers that were like cockroaches who just can't be killed. And one of the reasons I think that comparison is made, well, a lot of car dealers, I don't know, you don't want to spend a lot of time with them, but there's some good ones too, and hopefully we're among that crew. And we understand that the world is always changing, and so we have to change with it. We're very adaptable. And so we're very excited about electric cars coming. I mean, there's still a lot of issues to work out with the charging infrastructure. There's still issues to work out environmentally in terms of how do we power them, in a way, if we're just burning, the equivalent amount of fossil fuels to power them electrically, then we really, haven't made any significant gains. So there are a lot of questions to be resolved there. We're excited about their arrival. Subaru's got its first all electric coming in a year or two, and I can't wait to get my own, so that's the car, because that's the car I'm gonna drive as soon as they'll build it. So I think part of it's just being very open to it and not needing to insist that business continue the same way. I don't know anything about the restaurant business other than I like to eat out, but I will say that I think we're seeing businesses, the restaurant businesses that are able to focus on what can they do during COVID. So they're doing outdoor dining where they can, and they're doing trying to focus on takeout and experiences, meal packages, and I think those are the kinds of practices that all businesses need to be thinking about during COVID. And we've certainly had to change the way we do business. It's a very interactive business, automotive retail, and we've had to rely much more on off-site deliveries, fewer test drives, much more sanitizing. We've had to make a lot of changes.
And Jeff, my final question for you is, I know that you've had the good fortune of having over $100 million in profits and revenue, and I know you know how to turn a profit. But my question for you is, what do you think you would want your business and personal legacy to be defined by?
Yeah, I mean, another way I think about that question is when my funeral occurs and there are a few people around to tell the stories, what will they say? And I hope that what they'll say is some version of Saint Francis's prayer. You might be familiar with that one. That's the, you know, asking for blessings in the way that where there's injury, can I give pardon? Where there is darkness, can I bring light? And I would hope that people would say about me that I'd live my life in a way that where there was difficulty, I tried to bring ease, or where there was hate, I tried to bring love, or where there was exclusion, I tried to bring opportunity. And I think those, to the extent that those ideas live beyond me and that I influence people to adopt that way of thinking, then that'll be a very successful legacy. And I won't be around to hear it, but I think it'd make a pretty good eulogy.
And I know, just one follow up for you. I know that family is a big part of what you do, and I know you started your first business with your brother, and who always wanted to be in car sales as well. So I'm wondering the impact family has had on your business journey as well.
You know, it's always a little tricky to have partners in business because if you think about subject to various laws, if there's someone else in your company that you're not getting along with, you can ask them to leave. But having a partner in a business is a lot like being married. I mean, there's some really serious emotional, practical, and legal responsibilities you have to that person. So there are times where it's frustrating. It makes it harder because you have to agree on things that you might not be able to agree on, but I wouldn't trade it. And I think, even my brother and I, we now have a couple more partners, but for many years it was the two of us, and we split all the profits from the business. And I had friends, business owners who did not have partners, and they said, well, don't you get frustrated that you have to split all the profits? And my thought on that was not at all, because I think even half of what we generate together is much more than I'd ever be able to make on my own. So if you have someone that you get along with in your family really well, and which I always did with my brother, I think it's a great opportunity, if you can find a way to take it, to go into business with a family member, or later to invite family members into your business, as long as everybody's very mature about it, and there's good communication.
Absolutely. And how can people get connected with you, Jeff, if they're so inclined to do that?
I'd love to for your listeners to go to jeffmorrill.com. That's Morrill, jeffmorrill.com. And I've set up the website, so that people can buy the book there if they're interested in the book profit wise, how to make more money in business by doing the right thing. But if they don't have the $20 to buy the book or the $5 to buy the ebook, that's okay too. There's a lot of resources there. A lot of the tools that we use every day in our businesses are available right there for free. So, and I'd love to hear, from people who, there's a way to reach me there, and I'd love to hear from listeners. So.
Hey, Jeff, I really want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me to talk about business diversity, equity, and inclusion in your own business journey. Really appreciated the time and the conversation, and I want to thank you for being here this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks for the good work that you do in your community.